Welcome to the Christie Taylor Show. I'm your host, Christie Taylor, and I am super excited about Black History Month and having a chance to talk about film once again.
All the way from Toronto, Canada, Richard Pierre is an award-winning writer, director, and producer known for tackling a range of genres and subject matters. Pierre, a mixed-race Black filmmaker, places his focus on race-based projects. Richard's latest short, An Uninvited Guest, screened at the Toronto Black Film Festival, shot beautifully by Gayle Ye, is now streaming on CBC Gem. Lastly, he is the founder of Afro Flix that cultivates thought-provoking, high-quality content across multiple platforms. Whether working in fiction or nonfiction, Afro Flix is dedicated to tackling contemporary social issues and amplifying underrepresented voices while crafting unforgettable content that entertains and challenges audiences.
So, Richard Pierre, hi, Richard.
How's it going?
Very well, very well. First of all, Richard, so how's Toronto? What's going on?
It's Toronto's pretty nice. It's warm for the time being, so that should last for maybe 24 hours or less. And yeah, it's been a good day. Been doing some writing, so can't complain.
All right, awesome. Now in Memphis, I will say we had our snow week, and now we're back up to our 60s and 70s. So I don't know if we'll revert back to winter, but I think we're going to be headstrong into spring in just a few weeks. But, you know, Richard, I am so grateful that here in this Black History Month that we have a chance to talk about something I love, which is film. And to be able to talk about it with someone who loves to talk about these type of race-based subjects is, you know, really important to me. So first, Richard, we read your bio, but what are some things about you that we possibly didn't cover that might be interesting for our audience?
Let me think. I was born in Oakland, so I'm actually an American who came up to Canada when I was about 9. So I am actually am an American. I even vote in the elections. So okay. Yeah, I mean, there's that. What else is there? I don't know.
How did Oakland influence your film career? Or let's take it one step back. What inspired you as a child to even get into this path of entertainment and filmmaking?
Wow, that's a big question. It's interesting. So I'm a California person. I was born in Oakland, raised more or less in San Diego for a big chunk of my childhood until we came up here. But yeah, there wasn't really, in my childhood, there wasn't really any sort of inclining that I would be going into film. My mom's a photographer, so definitely my interest in cameras started, I think, somewhere in my teen years. I wrote short stories when I was like a little kid, and I think sort of at the end of high school, both of those ideas sort of came together, and I was like torn between potentially going into a film program and then maybe just going into business. So yeah, it wasn't a natural progression. I didn't have any examples around me to say you can work in film. I knew no one. I still have a relatively small network, all things considered. But yeah, it's tough to get into the film business if you aren't already have someone in your, I guess, vicinity in the film business.
Now, that is so true. Now, I will say Memphis being off the beaten path of Hollywood, one thing this city is known for is its music. However, it's a creative hotbed for all things creative, everything from art to fashion to filmmaking. But I say it's all based in storytelling. The South, the Delta is known for great stories. And I think that when we come to the filmmaking side, we're just pretty much trying to tell the stories we told in a song, or we're telling through fashion. We're trying to tell it through other mediums as well. So when you talked about photography and your mom, you know, did you pick up a camera in your teens and go that route? Because you have a great eye. I've looked at some of your work and I'm like, your eye is amazing.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, I mean, my mom, I don't know when she started her interest in photography. Like, she's a creative person for sure. She used to like make songs for us when we were kids. But yeah, I think she gave us our first cameras when we were probably like, I don't know, six or 7. So we had like these little 110 film cameras that we took horrible pictures with. But yeah, eventually she gave me one of her professional like SLR cameras, I think maybe in my teens. So I started to, I guess, take photography a lot more seriously. And yeah, when I went to film school, I did it thinking I was going to be a cinematographer, not that I was going to direct. Like I've always been writing, so I thought I would probably be like a screenwriter, cinematographer.
Yeah.
And I guess the reason I got into the directing side was basically I worked with a lot of white filmmakers, and they were making stories that I found less than compelling at times. And also, like in terms of the casting, I wasn't really seeing people that looked non-white. So I was like, yeah, maybe I need to sort of do something I don't necessarily want to do, but something that I can create some change in the industry.
Now, Richard, I want to bring this point out because I said prior to our starting this interview that we can get as nerdy about film as we want to. So for those who may not even understand, I will introduce this phrase, above the line. Above the line, you have your director, your producer, and your screenwriter. And below the line, that's when you get more into the crew. The part that most people don't understand is that the director producer really sets the tone, or we can say the mission of a film. Even though as a produced screenwriter, I was heartbroken to learn that even though I'm above the line, I'm still the lowest one on the totem pole if I'm not a producer or director. So can we talk about just very nerdy, the hierarchy of filmmaking and how as a cinematographer, who most people feel like if you're shooting the film, you have a lot of control. And if you're writing the film, you have a lot of control. Let's kind of dig into that and what your personal experiences have been.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think certainly like writing is its own thing, and you certainly do have a level of control over what happens on screen, but ultimately it ends up being a lot of the time it's like the director or the producer who makes creative choices. Like you could have a black character in a movie turn white very quickly just because the director's like, well, this person instead. And all of a sudden you have potentially a different film. Maybe not in the director or producer's eyes, but certainly in the writer's eyes, potentially. So yeah, it's important that people at the top are representing the people on screen. So like a producer, like a black producer, I think is probably going to potentially bring more black talent to a project. You know, it obviously depends on what their mandate is as a human being. Certainly for me though, it is like, even as a director, I would always have a say in like who the cast is, and I would try to have a say in who the crew was. Obviously, you can't micromanage every little tidbit, but when you're making short films, you can. So I try to be as diverse in my hiring practices as possible. Yeah, it can be a challenge also just finding those crew members that represent the rainbow you're looking for. Even finding the cast members, like you want. At the end of the day, you want the best talent for your film, and it's sometimes a hard game to find all the pieces that maybe fit your vision. And sometimes it means delaying the project in order to find those pieces. I've done that a million times. Like I'm just like, until I find the people I want to work with, I'm gonna wait because I want us on screen as much as possible and behind the scenes.
Now, one thing that I want to, for those who are like, what are they talking about? Watch movies, and they're talking about the whole, before they even shoot a movie. Okay, directors tend to be responsible in the hierarchy for the creative side, which are like the actors, things of that nature, where the producer tends to be, as he mentioned, if he's directing, he tries to make sure he has an input on the producer's impact on who the crew is. So just think of it like mom and dad. A director producer are the couple, and the screenwriter has provided them something to work from, a blueprint, so to speak. So when you get into the casting, that tends to be a director's call. And when you get into the producing, it tends to be responsibility falls on them to select who the crew is. Now, why is this important in Black History Month? As we now have the phrase that representation matters. Can you break it down for them, Richard, what that means just in a business with director, producer, selecting cast and crew? Black History Moment, representation matters.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, the term representation matters is about, the people behind the scenes that orchestrate everything have an impact on what viewers see, and it's sometimes a little intangible. It's not to say that a white director can't direct a black film, and I know there's tons of controversy which we can talk about that subject in and of itself.
Yeah.
But it's that a black filmmaker is potentially going to bring just a lot more authenticity to that story, and maybe be able to tell a more well-rounded story as a result of that. So
Yeah.
that's why representation matters. And it also matters in the sense that how these stories end up on screen shapes how a viewer sees the world. So I usually go for a very simple example. If you see black men as drug dealers, as a human being, regardless of your race, you're going to perceive black men as threatening more often than not. It's just like it works inside your brain, even if you try to fight it. If you're really awake to it, then yeah, maybe you can fight it off. But like that imagery is not,
That is so
it's
true.
not helpful. It's destructive. So whoever is orchestrating these events, they need to be someone who has some insight into that effect,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
It makes all the sense, because we do know that conditioning starts even as children, and that as human beings in human evolution, that a child mimics what they see, and that is even as we age, we're still mimicking what we see. We pick up our belief systems, our values based on the images. That's the power of advertising. We buy things because somebody tells us to. They put it enough times in between our favorite shows, and next thing you know, we have changed from Tide to Gain. Or we now want to go from the Honda to the Rolls Royce. We're constantly being pushed by audible and visual stimuli, and that's the power of the media, and that is the power of movie making. Now, as I said, we're in the Black History Month, segueing into Women's Month, and we're talking about representation matters. And I know that you, because you are seeking diversity in front and behind the camera, how important is it for you as a award-winning filmmaker, writer, and director to also be sure that the female voice is heard?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's one a lot of filmmakers, I would hope, struggle with. For me, like a lot of the times when I've been writing, I guess I'll backpedal a little bit. When I started writing screenplays, I think initially I always went with a male protagonist because I'm a guy, so therefore I know those stories well, right? I mean, just on a very simple level. But as I gradually, really thought about sort of films and filmmaking, I was like, so why is it that every, film we see is always a male protagonist? And I think over the years, this has changed a fair bit, and it's less so now, but it's still, that's the sort of go-to. So much like seeing, Black leading characters, I want to see more female voices or faces on screen leading projects. So a lot of the scripts I write, I tend to just err on working with a female protagonist, and it's sort of my default now. Because again, it's about seeing more diversity on screen. And generally speaking, when I write my characters, it's a female woman of color of some sort. Because again, we don't necessarily need more white faces on screen. We've seen 100 years or so of them. So if we did 100
That's
years,
a long time to see that. Yeah.
did 100 years the other way, we might strike a balance. But then in terms of like behind the scenes, so my latest short film, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit, I did this unconscious thing where I ended up with a pretty much all female crew, which I thought was amazing. It was one of those like moments where I'm not sure when it happened exactly that I went from, zero to all women. Not all, but very close to that. I think it's 70% or 80%. And it was completely unconscious. I just started like asking people for who would they recommend for this job, that job. And I just eventually ended up with all female or close to all female women of color. And I was just like, that's spectacular. I should do this all the time.
Now, Richard, okay, we can actually segue into your short in just a second, but I kind of want to talk about what I will call the Ava DuVernay effect. And it's not, the very fact that behind the camera, because for those who don't understand that there are more people below the line making money oftentimes than there are characters in a movie. So you're employing sometime, if you're doing a very high level short or feature, approximately how many people?
I think this crew was probably small in terms of film terms. I'm trying to even think. Maybe like 30 or so people. I think that's fairly small, but like, yeah, crews can get up to like hundreds of people if it's like, Sony's blockbuster. But certainly anywhere from, I would say, 40 to 100 would be fairly normal.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is important for those who are considering filmmaking as a profession, is that there are so many jobs that are not what you see. It's not always the actor. It's not always just the producer, the director, the screenwriter. It is anywhere between, you said, 30 to 100 people who you can employ in the craft of filmmaking. And to say that you had almost an entirely female crew, a woman's led crew, that is amazing. And the Ava DuVernay effect is highlighting those people who are proficient. So then when you get a referral, you're like, oh, Christie Taylor would be perfect as a script consultant. Plug. Shameless plug there. But to be able to work so that your work can be represented, so that you can get a referral, is so important. And you spoke to it. 100 years in one direction, we might get a balance by getting maybe even 50 to 100 years of inclusivity. Yeah, that's powerful. Okay, so let's get to your storytelling. I really want to dig into the fact, because I had a chance. Okay, you all have a chance. Be sure, and I'm going to make sure right now I put across here the all this great information that he has. But let me tell you, he has some amazing work, cinematically speaking. So to know that you started as a photographer who went into cinematography, who went into storytelling, who now is a director producer, I get the journey, because I was like, this is amazing, because I love it. But go to his website, Afro Flix, and check out a lot of the great work there. But when it comes to the storytelling piece, I noted that you have a very surreal, I want to say surreal and cerebral approach to storytelling. What do you get? Where is that based in? Just your personality, your temperament, or what feeds that beast?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think I've always liked sci-fi stuff. I've always enjoyed reading science fiction, watching science fiction. I've enjoyed shows like The Twilight Zone that sort of mess with your head and your perception. So yeah, I mean, I think that's where that all comes from. It's something I have to work hard at, but it's something I enjoy.
Even the Super Bowl Doritos commercial.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about that. What was the premise of that, and how did you even get that opportunity?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was actually something that I co-directed. Someone else wrote the concept, but I believe we may have like worked together on coming up with the concept. I don't remember. I'm not going to give myself credit because I don't actually recall. But yeah, it was like a fun idea that we're like, hey, can we shoot this? And we're like, yeah, we can shoot this. It looks really hard and it's going to require a lot of resources. Let's do it. Yeah. But yeah, sometimes that's just sort of how those projects come together. You're just like, let's do something really difficult. Okay.
Okay. So your first writing project, what was that, and how has your storytelling changed?
I guess I'd say my first writing project was a feature-length screenplay called Crooked, which was basically a coming-of-age film, loosely based on my childhood. And yeah, it managed to win, got to like a quarterfinalist of the Nichols Fellowship, which is like the screenwriting competition run by the people that do the Oscars. So
yes.
It's pretty good for a first shot. Since then, I haven't done anything.
Good. That was pretty good, Richard, out the gate.
Yeah.
And how has your storytelling changed over the years?
I think now I'm really trying to use genre as sort of my storytelling vehicle. So like thrillers, horror, sci-fi, to tell these stories about race as opposed to tackling them, we'll say, straight on. So, I mean, that's what happens in an Uninvited Guest. It's like, it's a dinner party in the Twilight Zone, basically. So I'm trying to do more things like that and see if I can make something that's entertaining and thought-provoking at the same time.
Okay, let's talk about the storyline and the premise of Uninvited, an uninvited guest.
Sure. I guess the best way to describe it is it's basically about a dinner where guests seem to have no reaction to a Black man being assaulted right outside their window. However, one of the guests does respond and take action, we'll say. I can't really give up too much because it's a 3-minute film, and if I say any more, you won't need to watch it.
Oh, okay. And speaking of that, it recently screened at the Toronto Black Film Festival, an uninvited guest. And what was the response?
Well, the thing with the online film festivals, which is weird, is that you don't get to get as much of that response factor. I can say that other festivals, it's done well. It's gotten some good press, and people have said positive things about it that my nightmare did come across. But yeah, the virtual film festival thing is still a little weird, where you can't sit in an audience and like gauge people's feedback. You just have to cross your fingers and hope someone says something to you in a DM on Instagram saying, wow.
I love it. Now, you have recently had distribution with CBC Gem. Now, is that a Toronto-based network?
So yeah, CBC is the national broadcaster in Canada. So the film screened on TV all throughout Canada and is now available online, unfortunately only in Canada.
Oh, wow.
Via the CBC. So I'm still working on some more festival screenings for the film, and still working on trying to find a US distributor so everyone can watch it.
You know, something, I'm gonna see if we can get you a Memphis-based film festival so that we can see it. And we'll chit chat also about some distribution opportunities you might find interesting. We're gonna be right back after this. We're back with an award-winning writer, producer, director from Toronto, Richard Pierre. His most recent short film, An Uninvited Guest. I'm going to put that screen back up there because I want to talk about this other film as well that I checked out. An Uninvited Guest was screening at the Toronto Black Film Festival. Now it has Canadian distribution at CBC Gem. And he had another project that I found very interesting on his website, a multi-platform website, Afro Flix. What are you? Now, I know that you really are into race-based, as you say, genre-based subject matters that have to do with race. What exactly was that film about? Because I watched the trailer, very, very interesting.
So What Are You is a short documentary about being mixed. And I like to say, since I'm a mixed race person, it was the most easy subject for me to possibly make a documentary on. Of course, when you're making movies, nothing is quite as simple as it seems at the start. But yeah, it's a 20-minute documentary that is, again, available in Canada, no problem. In the US, it's a little bit more dodgy, but you can definitely check out some links and see if you can track it down.
See if we can track it down. Well, as I said, that there are two amazing internationally based film festivals here in Memphis that I'm going to see if we can get you connected, because I love the look of your work. And I think that just from this conversation alone, that there are some great collaboration opportunities that we can have between Toronto and Memphis. So have you ever been, being that you are, you know, American, US born, Oakland, ever been to the Deep South?
I have. I've been to Georgia, but sadly I've not been to Memphis, so my life is meaningless. But I'll have to do something about that when the pandemic wraps up, which will hopefully be relatively soon.
Yes. Well, I will say this. Is there a Memphis song that you're familiar with? Are you familiar with any Memphis artists? Please say you at least know one Memphis artist that we can brag.
I mean, I'm sure I could think of, some song Memphis related, but I'm gonna have to skip that question because I'll probably say something dumb.
Okay, well, I'm gonna throw you a couple of names: BB King, Al Green, Isaac Hayes, 3 6 Mafia.
Isaac Hayes. I didn't know Isaac. Wow, I should have known that. Wow.
Yeah, of course, the whole stacks. Isaac Hayes and David Porter, Soul Man, the song. 3 6 Mafia, of course, Hustle and Flow, Al Capone. So yeah,
that's a long list.
That's Al Green, the Barcades, and the reason I'm throwing them out is because a lot of them had influence on the film community. As a matter of fact, literally the Barcades, the lead singer Larry Dotson, I got to give a shout out to him. They are celebrating the Watts Stacks documentary, and I just found out, going back to things we do not know, how influenced the Memphis scene was to even celebrating Watts after that riot 7 years with that documentary. So it's interesting how the infusion of music and filmmaking has that even brings us going back to Toronto, Memphis. And hopefully, yeah, we can have some influence on what you're doing. How important is music to your cinematic expressions?
I mean, it's huge. I mean, if you look at an Uninvited Guest has no dialogue whatsoever. So, I mean, the music kind of drives that film. And I'm definitely, I'm always looking for collaborators on the music side. Yeah. I mean, great music is so influential. Like, even like when I'm writing, I need music on all the time. I need to, it just keeps me inspired. And yeah, I mean, like, I love movie scores. I love all types of music, but yeah, I mean, where would we be without music? Music is a necessary ingredient in film.
Life would be meaningless without
it. It would definitely be meaningless and empty.
All right, Richard, Pierre, thank you so much. This has been lovely. Any last things that we need to make sure we are supporting you on? Because, as I say, I want you all to check out his website, afroflix.ca, which is for the Canada, afroflix.ca. You can check it out, scrolling across the bottom. Also, his social media. Anything, Richard, though, you want us to make sure that we support you on for 2021?
2021 is going to be an interesting year of me doing not a whole lot, I think. But definitely, if you want to reach out, drop me a line, DM. I will probably reply because I've got lots of time on my hands right now. So do it up, and I'll let you know when there's something to support for sure.
Well, we appreciate you so very much, and we thank you for being here on the Christie Taylor Show.
Thanks for having me.
Invite you all to support the show and also find out more about Richard Pierre.